Nikki Munson, ex-EYFS teacher of 11 years, current preschool worker and chief of governors, talks to us about life in the fast lane, juggling being a mum of 3 boys. She has seen it all, from trying school drop-offs, what it's like to let go, difficult friendship groups, and the day her son went into school with something unexpected attached to his uniform. I hope you enjoy this episode of Surviving Parenthood, a parenting podcast. Hi, Nikki. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you know, like when you get that feeling like you're going on holiday and you feel a bit excited. I feel like that talking to you. I'm a bit like, I have to like slightly rein myself in this interview. Okay, so mainly because I want to hear it again, could you please, because in the interview we like to ask the same thing each time, which is a funny parenting moment or parenting fail. Could you tell me how your middle one went into school last week?
Right, okay. So in the morning, we all got up late, which meant this was going to have a big effect on the way we went into school that morning. All 3 boys had a before school club with a male teacher, which is quite key to where we're getting to. Running down the road, we only live a minute from the school, so we're running down the road, boys with their coats on, rushing through the gate, giving them a kiss goodbye, and all of a sudden, Henry said, "Mum!" I turned round and looked at him, and he had a tampon, not a used one, a tampon attached to the Velcro of his raincoat, which, lucky enough, I managed to snatch it off, grab it, before his male teacher saw him at the beginning of the day.
Oh, so you saved the day.
Absolutely, but it was quite funny because he definitely knows what they're for.
I was going to say, did he know? Yeah, but he knew.
He did say to me he spent many of time in the bathroom opening those up like party poppers. So, oh dear,
oh, God.
It was a good way to wake up in the morning.
It's a good way. Wake up with a jolt. Your son goes in with a tampon attached to his uniform. I love it.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you have got 3 boys. You've got a 10-year-old, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old. Now, I know you on a personal level. I'm not going to pretend that we're not friends. But one thing I would love to say is that I'm always, not that I want to come across as too sycophantic, but I'm always very much in awe of how you parent in such a laid back and untroubled way. You just sort of float into the playground with more children than I have. But I don't really want to hear about the good stuff. I want to hear about the bad stuff because that makes me feel good. So let's go to the trickier corners of parenting. What would you say you find difficult about parenting, and potentially how do you overcome those challenges? What's a big challenge for you?
I think the biggest challenge for me is the managing and organising the time with 3 boys. Especially, I thought it would be easier once they were all in school together, but actually the admin is harder. It's just knowing what they need to have, where they need to go, what time they have to be there, what they need to take. And because like you mentioned before, because I have quite a laid back approach to parenting, when things are scheduled, I find that quite difficult to get into sometimes. And therefore, I find myself getting a tad stressed with those sort of organised moments, which many parents don't, because they like the schedule, but I'm quite happy when I haven't got a schedule. So I find that quite stressful. And also the other side is just the constant managing of 3 different personalities in the home.
How are they different?
Yeah, all 3 boys are very, very different. It's managing, again, it's time. Time's the key word. To use when talking about the constraints and difficulties within my parenting skills, because it's managing the time equally, which is impossible when you have a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old, because that 10-year-old, when he was 4, he had a lot of my time. And he's now 10 and he doesn't have as much of my time as the 4-year-old. And he can see that. So that's a difficulty in that. The noise, the mayhem, the chaos is all difficult at times, but without that, it would feel very strange in our house.
And tell me about the middle one. So obviously you've talked about sort of the varying needs between a 10-year-old and a 4-year-old, but how does your middle one sit in the family dynamics? How does he experience that setup?
It's really difficult with the middle one because I'm one of 3 as well. I'm the eldest. I have 2 brothers, and I was very, very aware of my middle brother, Lee. He won't mind me mentioning his name.
Yeah.
He always felt left out of things. And we've got quite a big age gap between my brothers. So I'm 5 years older than one, 7 years older than the other, because there's only 2 years between them. But he always felt like the one that was left out. So I really, really, really was quite keen for this not to happen with mine. But it has. It has. He sometimes I feel like I need to overcompensate for him because I've got 3 years between each child. So between the top and the bottom, there's 6 years. So their relationship is more nurturing. Where the other, with Henry, with both his brothers, he has a more just a more sibling sort of relationship where Freddie and Monty are quite nurturing. Henry finds that sometimes he feels a bit left out and he's battling both of them, and he feels that they don't like him as much as they like each other. So it's just about building his confidence. And for Henry, he's very lucky because the way he is, he has a lot of very special friendships. And so I just encourage him to spend a lot of time with those children and have those sort of time, probably more than the other 2. But I feel he needs that, and that's why I do that.
So it's about, what would you say, looking at what their needs are and how to address them to suit their specific personality and what they need from you.
Absolutely. And it changes.
Yeah.
It doesn't change over a month. It changes by week, day by day. He's quite a confident child, but sometimes he lacks confidence. When he lacks confidence, he really, really goes low. So it's just about picking him back up again. Organising our time so that he spends time with his biggest brother and just them 2, or perhaps with his little brother and just them 2, because, 2 company frees a crowd sometimes, especially in that dynamic. And he seems to feel he seems to get the brunt of it within our household. So it's just about managing time, recognising when he's feeling that way, and just encouraging him to speak about it. To be honest, he does speak a lot.
I do know. I know that from first-hand experience.
Yes, you do. And I think perhaps he's like that as well, because from a very early age, I was very aware. Like, from when I say an early age, from when we had Monty, the last one, I was very aware he all of a sudden become middle child. But I'm always trying to encourage him to speak up, because I know how my brother felt as he was growing up, and he's 35 and he still talks about being the one left out.
Yeah, you know what? My mum does that as well. She was one of 3, and she's got to be in her mid-60s now. Not because I'm just really terrible, as you know, at remembering people's ages, but even my own mother's. But she still now talks about her experience as a middle child and actually how tricky it was. But she didn't have the kind of nurturing setup that your middle one does, because you're so on the ball and you're looking at how you can adapt your way of doing things to suit him as well as the other 2. But she didn't have that. So I think as long as you're conscious and you're aware, then, which it sounds as though you are, then, I mean, that's amazing. So
yes, and it's just making sure that they don't overthink about it as well, because I do overthink it, and I've got to make sure I don't make it not a thing.
Yeah.
So it's like you say, just be conscious and aware, but not overplay his position in the family.
To not let that breed into your own anxiety, so that you're not then judging the situation from a place of anxiety and fear, rather than just looking at the facts. This is how it is, and what can I do for this child?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So that's parenting. Now, you're like the village expert when it comes to all things school. So I need to get my teeth into a few different teacher challenges. So I'm wondering what kind of challenges you've come up against. I mean, after the, and I would use the adjective harrowing experience of homeschooling my two children, and I love them deeply. I do love them deeply, and I hope that does come across that I love them deeply. But I do love them a little bit more when they're not here for half the day. So when I was homeschooling, I can't tell you the appreciation that I had for teachers. I already had it, but just that reached a whole new level after the sort of 2 or 3 episodes of homeschooling we had. And I just remember thinking, how on earth do these teachers get their children to sit down and focus and achieve? Like, I just don't even know how you did that and still do that. So I'm just sort of wondering how you kind of create an engaging environment for children, and also how that sort of plays into the aspect of attainment, like, you know, the requirements that you have to meet around attainment, the pressures of teaching. I know that attainment is something that parents specifically worry about. So what would you say about that?
Right. So the first thing you were talking about was homeschooling. It was something that I didn't enjoy either.
Okay.
It's something that's quite common with teachers. And I've been out teaching. I was out teaching for a while I was doing homeschooling, and people automatically think that my children were going to be the one that were homeschooled the best, but they're not. They wasn't, because at the end of the day, I'm their mother, not their teacher.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. From a very, very from the very start of my teacher training, I realised that actually the best way to fully engage with a group of children, especially young children, the key thing to have was patience, actually, and getting to know your class. So once you have the patience there and you're getting to know the class, you're getting to know the individual children, because no child is the same. That's something I'm really passionate about. I just don't see any child as being the same. Some children will be able to settle in really quickly. Some children may not. They may need that extra bit of support. But once you've got that there, and once you've got that mutual respect for the child as well, because it's not, being in a classroom for me and teaching isn't about the adult barking orders at children and for children just to take it in. It's more of an interaction. I always see the teacher's role in the classroom as a facilitator of learning. I don't think we provide the environment. We have to work to create an environment where the child is eager to learn and take things from each other and learn things from each other. It's not just about the adult. The adult has to do a lot of the planning and a lot of the preparation, and perhaps manage the environment and children and other adults, the equipment, everything like that. But ultimately, the children need to feel happy, safe and secure within the classroom environment to be able to learn.
I love the way that you just put that. That's really cool. Yeah, I really do. I really, really do. I feel like any parent with concerns, if you were like, we you know that our kids go to an amazing school and they're always they're very good at communicating. But I feel like if you were my kid's teacher and I came to you with any kind of concern, then I feel like you would just be a perfect person to talk to. I'm wondering about sort of parental concerns and what are the most common ones that come up. I know that before we've talked about friendship groups, haven't we? So what would you say about that?
Friendship. The biggest thing that parents are worried about is when their children start school, me too included, is who are their children playing with? Are they playing with someone? Are they on their own? Are they just walking around aimlessly feeling sad? Because for some parents, they had such a bad experience at school themselves. So they're taking that experience into the new school settings. I really, really feel confident that that really doesn't happen to children these days. We're so much more child-centred.
Yeah.
It's okay if your child. We've learned over the years that actually solo play is really good for a child as well.
Okay.
Sometimes they do like to play on their own. Sometimes they like to develop ideas on their own. They like to have space. They like to put up boundaries, which is really, really important. It helps them to feel happy and secure in their own, in themselves, so that they don't need other people to make them feel good as they grow older as well. I feel like it develops a really good life skill as well.
Okay.
Most children do have friends. Early stages, they tend to flip from friend to friend. Some children will cement, as we well know, friendships from the age of 2, and it will probably last a lifetime, like our children. Some children, my eldest child, he tends to mix with friends quite a lot. He still, I find, finds his friendship circles quite difficult at times as he's growing older, as his hormones have been producing. He finds that quite difficult, but that's okay as well. It's okay to be friends with somebody, and actually some things that people do you may not like, and you're allowed to leave that little friendship pod and play with somebody else. And it's about making sure children know that they can do that, and that they're not actually, it's not about being mean to somebody else. It's about saying, oh, I've had a really nice time playing with you. I'm going to play with this child, and it's not a big thing. My biggest worry is if a child is fixated on another child.
Okay.
Because the circumstances you might have there is, if a child's poorly, it might affect the way they are in school if they can't mix with other children. If a child suddenly moves school, again, it may affect the way your child might develop. Another problem we tend to have is sometimes parents who are friends expect their children to be friends. And actually, that's not what early socialisation is about. It's about encouraging the children to just reach out and mix with lots of different children. That's what I try to encourage within a classroom. If everybody would mix and play with different children. You may have, I used to have 2 groups. Back when I was teaching in reception year 1 and year 2, I used to have 2 groups. One would be on attainment, one would be, which I hardly used, and one would be more of a social group. And I always moved my social group. So, for example, if you had yellow group, I'd mix them up after half term so they were with other children as well. So they really got to know other children, and they had empathy for other children as well.
The Twinkl Parents Hub is full of helpful advice, activities, and ideas to support people like you. You can find stacks of content to help with your child's learning, blogs packed with fun ideas, and resources to support you and your child's health and well-being. Head to the Twinkl website, click Parents, and see how we can help you survive and thrive. Twinkl Parents, made by teachers, trusted by parents.
I'm just wondering, as a preschool teacher, I know that we've talked a lot about your role as an EYFS teacher, and now you work at a preschool, which is a lovely environment, isn't it? And it's sort of like, it's got a real community feel about it. So it might be different perhaps to other preschools and other children in other preschools. But I'm just wondering, from your personal experience being a preschool teacher, if we can talk a little bit about school drop-offs. So I know that is another thing that parents do feel incredibly anxious about. I mean, you could not have got a more sensitive child than Elliot, my youngest, could you? And he was going to preschool from the age of 2. I was lucky because my eldest did go to that preschool, so I knew the key worker, and I knew that it was somewhere that I could really trust, and I knew that he was being taken care of to the standard that I would expect. But at the same time, I think we had months of him crying. He was an incredibly sensitive child, and still is, and that is absolutely to be valued. However, it didn't make my experience with putting him into preschool any easier. I think once I literally took him in upside down and dropped him off upside down because he was like scratching at me like a possum, and I just had to get him into the preschool, and I knew, goodbye, Elliot, you'll have a lovely day, bye-bye. But maybe that's because I was so confident in the teachers. But I'm wondering about school drop-offs. Have you got any tips for parents, and what are your experiences of them are?
It's really interesting. It's a really interesting topic, and it's a really important one as well, because I think as practitioners in the early years setting and in schools, because it does happen within schools as well, and it can happen at any age as well, because things happen that changes at home can bring along this disturbance in a way a child would enter into a educational setting. What we need to be aware of is that when these children do get dropped off at the age of 2, a lot of the time that we are dealing with the adult's most prized possession.
Yeah.
We really need to make sure that we work hard to build up what the key word you said was trust within the parents as well, that they know that their child will be entering a safe environment, and an environment will make sure that their children will be okay. They are fine. I think that's key for you. I think that's what worked for you. You knew where your children were going, but for many parents, it's all new, especially if it's your first child as well.
Yeah, of course.
I've been on both sides. I've had children that have found it difficult to enter into the classroom environment, and obviously I've been a teacher that would receive them children 9 times out of 10. As soon as that door closed, they're fine. They're absolutely fine. I think my biggest advice for parents would be, get to know your setting well. If this is something that's really worrying you, speak to the manager of your setting, the key worker. If they don't want to speak to you about it, you know that that's the wrong setting. You know that that's not the right setting. I very much doubt that will happen, because anyone will speak to you about anything. It can be something that you think is really not important. But if it's to do with your child, everything is really important. Another thing that I think is a really good idea is not to over talk about where the child is going to. You want to prepare your child. There's a really fine line, because you want to prepare them that you're going to nursery tomorrow, you're going to school. But if you keep on talking about it and keep on bringing it up early, like, so if it's Saturday and you're saying, don't forget, on Monday you're going, Sunday, don't forget tomorrow, and you keep talking about it, it becomes something that they actually feel quite resistant to, and they're wondering why you keep talking about this, why they keep talking about it. Is it because you're anxious about it as well? Finally, the biggest thing I think is, when you drop your child off, come in with a big smile, be happy, even if they're punching you, even if you're hanging them upside down. I usually say, I hold my child's hand and we walk into school, and I tend to, it sounds really stupid, but I tend to sing him a song about what a lovely day you're going to have today. It's going to be wonderful. You're going to see your friends. You're going to play with the toys. You're going to have lots of fun. And he would sometimes be sobbing, but he's in. And then when you walk back out and you're feeling like the worst parent in the world, you're not. Because actually what you're doing is you're giving your child the opportunity to grow, develop, to socialise, to develop their personal and emotional development. And this is all key for that early child development, especially in unfortunately, because of the pandemic, it's really having a knock-on effect with children's confidence, their personal, social, emotional development. You've just got to be brave, and they will take their lead from you, I think.
Those are really good tips. So basically, to talk about your worries with your childcare setting, whatever that is, whatever that you choose that to be, not to talk about the upcoming event of going to preschool in a way that sort of feeds into any worry. Big smile at drop off, cheerio, have a lovely day. And not to give yourself a hard time. So definitely not to give yourself a hard time, because you're not putting them into prison, not putting them into concentration camp. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine. It's going to be fine.
Most settings also offer an opportunity for the parents to come in and settle their child in. I find that personally for me it never worked, because I felt that it just prolonged the separation.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Yeah.
For some children, it may work, because then you can slip out. We've had situations where parents will just slip out and it just worked. They've just come in, settled them down, and they've slipped out. For me personally, I found that prolonged the separation anxiety for my child. So it's about finding what fits you and your child best, and it just communicate, because the nursery setting will expect you to phone them back 10 minutes later. You won't hear your child screaming on the other side.
Yeah.
They will probably send you pictures of what they're doing.
Yeah.
And if this isn't working, then you just ring them up and you sort out a meeting, or you chat to them about what additional needs your child might need, because there's things you can set up, like you can have home school books, so you can have pictures of the setting that you can have at home, so the child is familiar with this at home. You can maybe think about if you feel your child is too young, by delaying start of nursery for a couple of months if it suits you. It doesn't suit everybody, because some people may need to work. There's lots of options, but the key is not to worry about it. They won't be like this forever. It won't happen forever. And it may be sporadic. It may be they'll be fine, and then all of a sudden at 5 it starts again, and at 7 it starts again. And you'll just have to use different approaches to them at different points in their life.
So it is about sort of attempting to be flexible with each child and each situation.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about separation as you chat there, Nick, and I'm thinking about, it is tricky, it is confusing, isn't it, for parents to, in one hand, nurture them and hold them close, and in the other hand, let them go, like let them be separate from us. It's a tricky and confusing thing to manage and be okay with. And I think, like what you were saying about the different stages of each child there and what they would go through, whether it's the preschool drop-offs and then they go to big school, like your youngest has just started school in September, and then it's going to big school and hitting puberty. And there is a sense of whatever stage that child is in, there's an ongoing instinct to not only shelter them from discomfort, but also to mourn, let go of each stage of loss, if you like.
And the situation I'm in at the moment, I've just had a child just starting school, and I have a child that's coming to the end of his primary education. And this is a real new stage for me. It's something that I'm dreading. I'm a little bit excited, because I'm excited for the new world that he's about to enter, but he loves where he is. He loves the people he's surrounded by, and it's really nerve-wracking, but I have to let go. We have to let go. We have to let them fly, and he will be absolutely fine. It's okay for him to swoop. It's okay for him to come back, and you swoop in and you put your protective wings over them, because you'll always do that. As long as you are a parent, you will always do that. But it's about allowing them the freedom, the space to breathe. And it will be a difficult thing for me, and it is always a difficult thing for any parent. And I think that's what I'm dreading as a parent, is him leaving primary school, going into secondary setting. I think for me, because I work in the industry and I'm working with the EYFS, I feel so confident with the youngest one going into a setting where he has his brothers, he has that security. I know where he's going. I don't actually know where the big one is going, and he's quite a sensitive soul as well. So it's just making sure that we set ourselves time to talk about this and encourage him to talk, because soon he will be grunting at me, won't he?
I know. That's that. I mean, now that he's 10, it really is a countdown to that time when he will probably want to be quite separate from you. So it is, I guess, relishing those last few moments while he is in need of his mama quite a lot. And I guess, just to end the interview in a really positive way, yes, there might be a sense of loss with each stage, but with each new adventure comes a wonderful set of possibilities. So that's something to feel excited about. And
it is exciting. And I feel we need to remember as parents, we actually don't own these people. We don't own them. we have to let them develop their own personalities, their own self-belief. We guide them. I think it's guidance, isn't it? And sometimes we get that wrong as adults, guiding our children the wrong way. And it's just about not being too hard about it. It's about just refocusing. Tomorrow's a brand new day. Let's go again. Just not. Just we need to. They need to grow to make their own decisions with things, make their own mistakes. Because if they don't, and we don't allow them that, to make mistakes and to develop that way, they're just never going to survive. Well,
no. They'll never develop that resilience to face the big challenges that the wider world can confront you with. So, absolutely. Yeah, I loved chatting today, and I think what you said about we don't own them. Our kids do come through us. They're not part of us. They're separate entities, but we can facilitate and guide them only to the very best we can with the stuff that we're carrying as adults, which is inevitable. And I just, get up and go again is the perfect last bit of advice I think you could give. So it's amazing. Thank you so much. It's so true. It is absolutely perfect. Thank you so much. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.